And Happy New Year, everyone. And definitely everything I say today is applicable to everyone present, whether you're a man or a woman. So just want to make sure that is certainly clear. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with all of you today to share my story and to also share some of the lessons I learned along the way. I think storytelling, both sharing your story and receiving someone's story, is very powerful in and of itself. So let me get my screen shared here and I'll get going. There we go. Are you guys able to see that?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay. So actually, before I start, I am going to ask you to participate in the chat a little bit because I'd like to get to know you a little bit better. And so if you can go into the chat, I've got some pretty easy questions, so don't be too worried about them. And we're going to start with this one, which I selfishly like to ask because I'm always looking for good shows, movies, or series to watch. So what is your favorite movie or series you've watched during the pandemic? Sound of Music. I'll share with you some of mine. Oh my goodness, Faith Bridgerton. I just binge watched that the last couple of days. It was amazing. I also really enjoyed Schitt's Creek, which is a Canadian series, and loved that, so I'd recommend it. Queen's Gambit was amazing. The Crown was amazing. We have similar tastes, it seems. I also watched this amazing documentary yesterday called The Biggest Little Farm, and really enjoyed that one. So a little bit different if you're looking for a documentary. It's called The Biggest Little Farm. Yes, I hear you. I hear you about the Duke. Great. 2012. Amazing. Power. Again, very similar taste. Vikings. Yes, I've watched a little bit of Vikings, but it's a little bit intense for me. So I don't watch it. I don't binge watch it. Scandal. Amazing. So thank you so much for sharing. The second question, now that you guys are all warmed up, is coming up. Okay, so a little bit more in line with my talk tonight, but what words would you use to describe someone who is powerful? So again, if you can go ahead and share in the chat, that would be great. One of the reasons I think it's really important to kind of reflect about somebody who's powerful is that for some people, this word may have negative connotations to it. Loving what's being written in here: charismatic, inspiring, awesome, brave, enthusiastic, authentic, courageous, determined. Love it. Genuine, inspiring, amazing, hero, empathetic. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. And again, the reason I ask is because when I talk about taking your power back, it is about filling you up so that you can be your best self, to give and to also receive. Some people, and I would say especially women, have received a lot of messages about maybe shying away from being powerful, that sometimes being powerful means you can't be caring. And that you're not able to look after people, messages that as women we often receive as we're growing up. And so I wanted to just have everyone check in with how comfortable they are with thinking about their own power and embracing their own power. Excellent. Admire. Osita, you're getting some props here in the chat, so you should check it out. Okay, next question. What are the 3 most common emotions you experience on a regular basis? And really want you guys to sort of pause and reflect. Often we're not paying attention to how we're feeling during the day. We're like totally focused and busy and running around. Or we might be feeling really intense emotions, and those are a lot easier to be paying. It's hard not to know what they are, but really want you guys to kind of reflect on what are your 3 most common emotions if you were to to think about a typical day: overwhelmed, stressed, positive, and restless. I love that. Sometimes it's a combination of maybe feelings we don't prefer to have and also feelings we do like to have. I'll tell you, for me, that my three most common emotions lately are anxiety, which is a very common emotion for me generally. Curiosity. I've really embraced the feeling of curiosity and kind of can generate it quite frequently. And honestly, a little bit of sadness, just lingering there, just the state of the world today. So those are some that I would share. Focused, frustrated, joyful, hopeful, despair, inertia. Thank you so much for sharing that with all of us. So with that in mind, I'm going to go to my next slide. So again, thank you so much for sharing. I'd like you to kind of keep in mind that question about what emotions you've typically been feeling lately as we kind of go in through the rest of my talk today. Okay, so why am I asking all of you about your feelings? If you really think about it, aren't feelings the reason why we want anything? I mean, why do we really want the job or the promotion or the car or the house or the family? Isn't it really about how we think we will feel when we get those things? Maybe it's proud or accomplished or loved or joy. And also, aren't feelings why we don't want certain things or we avoid certain things? Maybe we don't want to have a tough conversation or present at a meeting or pitch to a client or take that next level job because maybe we want to avoid feeling anger or shame or disappointment or maybe anxiety. But what if our feelings are not caused by what we do or not do? What if they are not caused by our circumstances at all? What if our feelings are actually caused by how we are choosing to think about our circumstances? Now, for some of you, this concept might be sort of blowing your mind a bit, but for others, you might be thinking, yes, I already know this. I've read books, I've read quotes about it. I get the concept. I was in the latter camp. Theoretically, I totally understood the importance of how I was thinking and that it might impact my experience. However, I had no idea how to put this concept into practice. I continued to focus on figuring out what actions to take and how to take them, and very little time figuring out how to manage my mind, how to think on purpose, how to really be aware of what my beliefs are. And often for folks coming to me, my clients or individuals I'm mentoring, their first question often is, what do I do? And my response is, tell me how you're thinking about this issue first, and let's get down to that. So let me share with you the journey I took to finally figure out how to think on purpose. I've chosen what I believe to be pivotal moments in my life where shifts in my thinking had lasting effects on me, both personally and professionally. And I'll focus on how I was experiencing those times in my life, the emotions I was feeling. And I also encourage you to take some time to reflect on your own pivotal moments and your own story. How did you experience those pivotal moments? What were you feeling and thinking during that time in your life? And what results did that thinking produce for you? So this is me at 17 years old doing homework. I bet you didn't think you would see a picture of me at 17 years old. With my bad posture, which I still have, although I'm being pretty good today, and my word processor, which might give you an indication of my age. I grew up in a fairly homogeneous environment, I would say. Most of my family and friends were middle class, white, Catholic. I was born and raised in what is considered the automotive capital of Canada, Windsor, Ontario. And to me, anyone who was different from my norm was not only fascinating, but had an advantage. I thought being one of few people I knew that was left-handed was the coolest thing. I was also very smart and often top of my class, which I also thought was pretty cool. I decided at this time in my life that I wanted to apply to a business program at university. My computer teacher at the time, which surprisingly was a woman, asked me one question that changed my thinking and my path. She said, "Everyone is going into business. What are you going to do to set yourself apart?" I knew there were very few women in technology, and because I believed having a different and unique perspective was a superpower, I decided to apply to computer science at the University of Windsor. Now, experiencing both the challenges and opportunities of being one of very few women in tech also fueled a lifelong passion in me to continue to support and embrace diversity and inclusion and to help others embrace their unique, amazing selves. At 18, my life turned upside down. On a Sunday afternoon, while lying on the couch in our front room watching football, and to be fair, the only reason I was watching football is because my boyfriend at the time, now husband, is obsessed with football. I abruptly came to know that my parents were separating. I did not see this coming. I had experienced a very loving and stable family life. So much before this moment, I hadn't allowed myself full credit for my achievements. Of course, I was doing well. I didn't really have anything else to worry about. Now, my anger and grief led me to the thought, I will not let this impact my goals. That thought fueled such determination in me that I finished my last year of high school with my highest grades ever, taking home numerous awards and scholarships at my graduation. This experience taught me unequivocally that I can do hard things. You may have similar experiences as well that you can recall. Many years later, I found myself at another pivotal point. I had built a strong career in technology, moving to increasingly senior roles, had traveled to incredible places. I got married, I bought a home, and I was a mom to 2 amazing kids. We always had plans to have more children, however. Now, after trying to get pregnant again for several years without success, fertility treatments and all, I felt defeated and powerless and exhausted. So at 35, I chose to let go of our vision of having a larger family. This letting go opened up doors for me to grow in new ways. It gave me the time and mental space to pursue an executive MBA degree and also to get promoted to an executive level role at work. At 41 years old, I was asked to take a new job at work. It was another executive level role with a great team and a challenging mandate. It was in an area I had previous experience in, and I knew I could make a huge impact. In my head, there were so many reasons to be excited about this new job, but my heart was not in it. The fact was, I didn't want to do it. To make matters worse, I had no idea what else I might be interested in doing at the company. This turned into a strong belief that I had no other options at all and just had to suck it up. My thinking left me trapped. I painted myself into a small corner. I spent the next 2 years like my friend in this picture, totally shitty inside with a fake smile plastered on my face. In hindsight, I realized that it took me those 2 years to accept the fact that what I really wanted next was not available at the company I was at. It took me 2 years to build up the courage to leave the place I had thrived at for nearly 20 years and to open myself up to a new adventure. At 45 years old, I hit rock bottom, quite literally. It was a rainy November morning. I was running late for my 7 a.m. train to Toronto. Other commuters can probably relate to that. After parking illegally because the lot was full, I was sprinting in my dress suit. I had a big puffy white jacket that you could see for miles. As the train was pulling up, just sprinting, fortunately had my runners on. Right as I got near the train where everyone was waiting to board, I slipped and had the most epic face plant into the cement you've ever seen. Physically, somehow I only managed to scrape a few layers of skin off my knee, but mentally I was a bit of a mess. I put my hood on to cover my face and quietly cried the entire 1-hour train ride. I was working for a great company that I had joined 2 years prior. I had been promoted 6 months earlier. The new job was a welcome challenge. I had wonderfully supportive colleagues. But the thoughts that had plagued me nearly my entire career had come back with renewed strength. And the stakes at my age seemed so much higher to me. Thoughts that included, you have no idea what you're doing, you aren't doing enough, this is too much. Some of those thoughts may sound familiar to some of you as well. In hindsight, I was actually doing amazing. Talk about facts and thoughts. I had stepped into a role I had never done before. I had led the team through many hurdles. I had presented to the board and senior executives at the firm for the first time ever. And I had passed an intense internal audit, all while recruiting a large number of new team members to replace a lot of vacancies in my organization. But at the time, I didn't see any of that. Everything was filtered through my belief that I wasn't good enough. That train ride after my epic fall was a turning point for me. I knew I needed help. Changing my circumstances was not working. No matter what I was doing, I was taking the same brain and the same thinking along for the ride. Several Google searches later, I found a life-changing podcast, which I'll also reference at the end, and I also found my life coach. So with the help of coaching, I experience my life and career very differently now. It opened up adventures and possibilities that I would have otherwise never dreamed of, including an epic canoe trip, and that is me portaging with a canoe on my back, and becoming a certified career coach, and an entrepreneur in the middle of a pandemic. Of course, I still experience the ups and downs of life and all the emotions that come along with being a human, but instead of trying to act my way to feeling better, I've learned how to think and feel my way through each day. My first question isn't what should I do, but rather, how is my thinking impacting my experience and my results right now? I've stopped treating unwanted emotions as problems to solve, but rather feelings to allow. And most importantly, I'm able to recognize when I'm judging myself harshly and look at those judgmental thoughts with compassion and curiosity, rather than to buy into them hook, line, and sinker, which is what I had been doing for 20 years prior. Now, for me, this is what empowerment looks and feels like. Being able and willing to feel any emotion, bringing awareness to my current thoughts and beliefs, and being able to think on purpose to create the results and experiences I want in my life. Now, let me share with you some ways to recognize when you're giving your power away and how you can start to take that power back and to be able to gain your own form of empowerment. Okay, first and foremost, and as illustrated throughout my story, we give our power away to our brain when we take what it offers us without inquiry or intention. So the first thing I think it's important to take in is that you are the boss of your brain. I kind of think of my brain as my personal assistant. It's brilliant, it's an overachiever, obsessed with my safety and survival, and it likes to choose the most efficient and least difficult path possible, all of which sounds amazing. However, even though your brain is very well intended, it is very specifically programmed. And without proper context and without your direction, it will produce results for you that you may not want. The second thing I think is important to understand is that your brain will offer you facts and thoughts, but mostly they're thoughts. And what is the difference between these two things and why is it important? So first of all, facts are neutral, stripped of subjectivity. And a couple of examples I'll give you is, I was born in May, I live in Canada, I have 2 cats. And these are actually all true facts about me. Thoughts, however, include subjectivity. They often include adjectives. They represent our perception and interpretation of how things are. They have the possibility of optionality and movement to them. So for example, I was born in the worst month ever, May, is a thought. I live in the best country, Canada, is a thought. And I have 2 spoiled cats. So notice the difference between facts and thoughts and the opportunity for optionality within your thoughts. Now, also, I will say most of us believe our thoughts are hard facts, especially I will say technology-minded people typically will think their facts are thoughts because they're very often very analytical in nature, and they've analyzed it to the point where they just believe they're true. Sometimes these thoughts include things that are very much not serving us, like I am lazy, I am a terrible speaker, I am behind. And then we buy into them. And what our brilliant brain does as our personal assistant is says, oh, this is what you think? Well, I'm going to go and find all kinds of evidence that that's true. So if we want our brain doing work for us to find evidence for a thought we have, we better be pretty careful about what that thought is and whether it's serving us. So I would like to offer that our thoughts are suggestions from our brain for our consideration. It's really less interesting to figure out if they're true and much more powerful to decide if they're helpful to you or not. And I'll also lastly say that you have the ability to choose thoughts that serve you, that produce feelings and results that you want in your life. So let me give you a few common examples that I have seen when we give our power away to our brain. And most of these are generally not super helpful for people. So the first one is, I don't know. Brain will offer you the thought, I don't know. Another example of this is, I have no idea. I'll never figure this out. And often it will cause us to feel confused, and it really shuts down our ability to problem solve. It shuts down our ability to look for possibility. And so just notice if this thought's coming to you. And often it will happen if you're venturing, maybe you're in a new job or you're doing something you haven't done before. Your brain doesn't want you to do something that's unknown. It's scary. It's uncertainty could pose risk to you. And so I don't know is a thought that will keep you trapped, and your brain will think it's keeping you safe, but it's kind of keeping you trapped. So if you tend to have that thought a lot, I would just suggest a more helpful thought might be, I'm figuring this out right now. And then your brain will start to work on, oh, how can I figure this out? You'll start to get it to work for you. Another really common thought is, I'm so busy. In fact, we throw that around with each other all the time, and it can actually be very, very unhelpful and unproductive. And often it makes us feel very overwhelmed when we think we're so busy. And so I'll just share a discussion I had with one of my clients, and she had this thought all the time. It was constant. Whenever anyone asked her how she was, I'm so busy. When she was with her family, I'm so busy. When she was talking to me, she said, I'm so busy. And then we talked about how it was causing her to feel really overwhelmed. And I said, why are you choosing to think that? And she started to sort of step back and reflect on how often she was telling herself how busy she was. And of course, your brain finds all kinds of evidence as to why you're so busy. And what we did is started to think much more factually, like, what are you actually doing? Instead of putting the thought that you're so busy, what are you doing? How are you spending your time? Maybe your day is full. Maybe your day consists of 5 meetings and 2 work periods, but just sort of breaking that habit of thinking we're so busy. And I'll share with you, most people that reach out to me for support or help, they automatically say, oh, I know you're so busy. And I say, no, I'm actually not busy. My day is full, and it's a pleasure to spend time with you. Makes me feel wonderful. When I think I'm so busy, I don't feel wonderful. I feel overwhelmed. The next one, very common thinking, is I'm not doing it right. And I put right in quotes because it's an example of a word that's very immeasurable. Another version of this is I need to do it better. I'm not doing enough. These are all words that are very vague. And often if you find yourself saying, I'm not doing it right, or I need to do it better, or I'm not doing enough, really would ask you to sort of step back and think about, how do I even define that? What does it even mean for it to be right? Is it even possible for me to achieve that? Do I want to do it that way? And just get yourself out of that habit and start to be really curious about it. And I'll just offer you this very powerful thought, is that the right way is the way you decide it to be. It's a decision that you can make. I can decide that this is exactly how it needs to happen. And so watch out for those vague words that are very difficult to measure. And again, for me, that causes me to feel anxious. For others, it could be a different feeling. And lastly, very common is when we use the word should or shouldn't. I should be making my kids lunch every day. I should be getting up earlier. I shouldn't be eating this bag of chips, which I often eat a bag of chips because they're delicious. When we say should or shouldn't, it often leaves us feeling either guilty or anxious. And ironically, if you really think about it, when we say I should be getting up earlier, for example, we often don't, because the feeling of guilt does not promote us to be motivated to do something. It actually prevents us from doing what we want. So I just say again, bring awareness to when you're using the word should or shouldn't, and instead reflect and say, what do I want to do? I want to do this may feel better for you. It might feel motivating for you. It might feel calm for you, right? So another example of a common thought that generally is unhelpful for most people. Okay, another area where we give our power away is to what I'm referring to as control. Specifically when we use a form of control to resist or avoid our emotions. Each of us will have our own form of control. And these may change over time. I've listed some examples of some common ways of potentially resisting or avoiding our emotions. Interestingly, for me, after my parents separated, I slept a lot, and that's why I put sleeping in there. I happen to be a really good sleeper, which is, I feel very blessed that I happen to be a really good sleeper. So I did not want to feel during that time, and so I slept a lot. I took naps. I didn't feel when I was sleeping. So for me, that was a bit of a way of avoiding and resisting the emotions I was feeling. Most of my career as well, my go-to had been to work super hard and keep busy. If my brain's focused on tasks, those sneaky thoughts that caused me to feel the feelings I didn't want to feel, I was able to kind of avoid them. So that's another way that sometimes that can show up for people. Now, the interesting thing is the results of avoiding or resisting our feelings are analogous to what happens when you try to push a beach ball into the water. And if anyone's tried to do this, it can actually be quite funny. It takes a lot of energy, and regardless of how hard you try, it eventually pops up and often will hit you right in the face anyway. So whether we like it or not, we are all humans. We're going to have feelings. Some of them we prefer over others. All of them present opportunities for us to understand ourselves more deeply. I have a couple suggestions to help you take back your power from control. The first is to recognize that our feelings are simply sensations in our body caused by our thoughts. Pay attention to those sensations much more closely. Allow yourself to get curious about them. I have a couple of suggestions to help you to help you do this. And one is to ask yourself, how does this feeling feel in my body? So for me, anxiety, for example, is heavy in my chest. It's swirling, it's kind of hot, and then I feel sort of hunched over. It's just a way to start to get to know your feelings a little bit more, just by checking in with your body and the sensation that feeling's created. What about excitement and anger? Like, sort of play it out as you're experiencing different feelings. The second one is to understand that by allowing yourself to feel your emotions fully, you're actually reducing your suffering. Now, it's often the judgment we place on our emotions, our thought about the existence of that feeling that cause us the most suffering. So thoughts like, something's terribly wrong, I have to fix this, it's stupid to feel sad, I shouldn't be crying, or I don't have time for this right now. I'll give you a simple example that, sorry fellows, but many of the women on the call will connect with, and maybe some of you who are partnered with women would connect with this, but every month I get anxiety that feels very intense, and this has been for many years. And when I decide it's just hormones and everything is fine, it's much easier for me to allow it to be there and to manage it in a way that serves me. If I decide that I hate it, it's a huge problem to be fixed, all my mental energy gets sucked up trying to resist it, and the anxiety actually becomes more intense and lasts longer. So allowing your emotions to be there significantly reduces your suffering. Practicing being willing and able to feel your emotions gives you so much power to face your greatest fears, commit to your wildest dreams, to take risks, and to keep moving forward, all while having your own back. So, and with that, my friends, I do have a challenge for all of you to help you practice taking back your power with the suggestions that I provided. And one of them is a very simple, what I call a daily awareness practice. And it really just involves you taking some time, maybe it's in the morning, maybe it's at lunch, maybe you set an alarm, maybe it's in the evening, and just check in with yourself and name the feeling. How are you feeling right now? How does it feel in your body? What is the feeling? Is it sadness? Is it grateful? Is it joy? Is it determination? And then find the thoughts that are associated with that feeling. What is happening for you? And again, for me, anxiety comes up a lot. And if I really check in with myself, the thought I'm having is, you're not doing enough. My brain loves to offer that to me. So I just accept that it's offered it to me. And then I question it. Is this true? Is this thought helpful? Why am I choosing to think it? So name the feeling, find the thought, and then get curious about it. And then the second challenge, which isn't on the slide, but I'll also offer you, which has really been helpful for me, is a go-to thought when things get tough. And I'll share a couple of my go-to thoughts. Some of you may have some and can share them as well in the chat. I have a few depending on what's going on, but one is the one I shared earlier, which I learned when I was 18, which is, I can do hard things. So that's very helpful for me. The other one that's really helpful is, I'm exactly where I need to be right now. I may not know why, but I'm exactly where I need to be right now. And that helps to get me really, really centered. And then a third thought I'll share with you, especially if I'm doing something new, is, I don't need to be perfect. I'm just here to learn. It's not my job to be perfect. It's my job to learn. And that really helps introduce a feeling of curiosity and openness especially if you're venturing into something new that maybe you're not so comfortable with. Okay, and with that, I will close with just offering some of the resources that I've used that have been really helpful. I love podcasts. You may have suggestions for other great podcasts. The first one I have listed here is actually the one that I found when I was 45, just after being on that train ride. And the podcaster of that one, which I won't say because it has the F word in it, is actually my life coach. She's the one that I got connected to and really was really life-changing for me. And then these books are just amazing examples of things to expand the way you look at life and you look at what's happening around you. Reboot in particular is a different way to look at being a leader and career. And then of course, very much would love if you checked out some of the blogs I've written on my website, jennifergibbscoaching.com, and also on Instagram and Facebook at Jennifer Gibbs Coaching. I try to offer content that seems to come up a lot with my clients and with a lot of the folks that I am mentoring. Okay, and with that, I think we can do Q&A. It was a pleasure to share my story with you and look forward to any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. That was so good to hear for the start of the year. A lot of truths and nuggets that we sometimes ignore, ignoring our emotions, ignoring our thoughts and our feelings. And it's just good to hear you point us back in the right direction, and to be able to validate one's feelings and use them as a power to achieve your dreams is certainly something that I think all of us need. Thank you so much. Thank you for that presentation. It did open, I was scribbling like crazy, and it did open up a lot of questions for me. So I'm sure that it did for a lot of folks as well. Our first question is, do your dreams or ambitions scare you? And if they do, how do you convince yourself that they're accessible or achievable? How do you cope with the imposter syndrome?
Amazing questions. Maybe I'll take them one at a time. Do my dreams and ambitions scare me? Absolutely. I think that's a natural response to something that's stretching you. And when you're growing, I think it's similar to the common phrase that if, in order to grow, you often need to feel uncomfortable, and discomfort is part of growing. I'll share with you a story too about one of my best friends. Many of my friends are phenomenal. She's phenomenal. And she has done so many things in her life that I would never have imagined doing. And I said to her one day, God, you're so fearless. And she said, I am not fearless at all. I am full of fear, but I'm also full of courage. And so it always really stuck with me. So yes, I do feel fearful. But when I think about my dreams and the reason why I have my dreams and ambition, I also have the thought, this is really important to me and I can do this. So you can definitely have thoughts that cause you to feel fearful, but you can have also really powerful thoughts that you invest much more time and energy in that are telling you, keep going. You want this. This is important to you. And so that's sort of my answer to that. I think there are a couple more questions that scrolled up.
Yes, and the next one I'm going to ask is your last sentence was a segue into that. How do you start, or when do you start to see yourself as powerful?
I think that you can just choose to see yourself as powerful. And, in a little bit more practical terms, one of the exercises that I take my clients through is I have them tell their story. And often it's journaling, but you can tell your story verbally. But, what is the story you're telling about yourself today? And then I have them retell that story with the same facts, but with different thoughts, as if they thought and believed they were amazing, as if they were embracing their greatness, as if they were assuming they were powerful. And I have them rewrite their story. And it's really an interesting practice and a practical way that you can really see, like, why am I choosing to tell the story this way when I could tell it when I can really embrace my power and tell it in a powerful way. And if you look at the facts, they're all still true. It's not like you're lying or you're misrepresenting things. You're just choosing to believe and embrace the possibility of your greatness. And it's not necessarily a thing that happens quickly and overnight, but it is something you have to be very intentional about. And so for me, even when I'm feeling the imposter syndrome, those thoughts still come up. As I said before, I just don't buy into them. I get curious about them. And then I try to be intentional about what I want to think about myself. And generally, why would I not want to think about my greatness and practice thinking about my greatness? And we all have our own unique greatness in us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. How do you cope with anxiety when it seems like the existing conditions are not within your control?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And as I mentioned, I do tend to have a lot of sort of anxiety inducing type of thoughts. But my response back to that is where do you have control? And as I've sort of been presenting here, you have control over your thinking. You can get really curious about your thinking. So no matter what your circumstances are, the anxiety is being caused by how you're thinking about the circumstances. And so just starting with that awareness can be really powerful. I would never recommend someone try to force themselves to think differently about something, but I very highly recommend starting to give yourself a little bit of room in your mind to think about different possibilities around that circumstance and about maybe different ways to get curious about how you're thinking about it, and just start there. The other thing I would say, as I've mentioned, is it's okay to feel anxiety. It's okay that it's there. And I often say, you know, what would compassion say to you right now? And allow yourself just to feel compassion and curious, and allow yourself to have the anxiety. And just be really aware about how you're thinking about your circumstances. And that applies to any circumstance. I've not seen that practice to be not applicable for any circumstance. But again, it's not about forcing it. It's about trying to at least start to get curious about it.
Okay. I think that would also answer the next question, which was to how do you train your mind to focus on learning? And you just explained that it's really by practice. It's really by doing little at a time and understanding yourself and getting curious about your thoughts and emotions. There's another question here about time, how to manage your time when 24 hours don't seem enough.
Yeah, I'll tackle this in two different ways. The first thing I'll share is this was a concept that just totally blew my mind, and I'm still sort of working through it. But often we bring to our circumstances a mindset of constraint. So we come from the mindset that our time is limited and constrained. The opposite of having a constrained mindset is coming from a place of abundance. What if everything I needed was available to me? What if I had all the time in the world? And the follow-on question is equally powerful. If I had all the time in the world, what would I choose to do? So that's one thing, is just sort of introducing the notion of having a mindset of constraint, where we're constantly focused on all the things that start to narrow down our possibilities, or sort of trying to cultivate an abundant mindset, which starts from the assumption that there's many, many, many possibilities. So that's one thing. But for time, in addition to that, just from a practical perspective, I often suggest to people to really be specific about how they're spending their time. And for everything that they are doing, to really ask themselves, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to? And if you don't want to do it, be honest with yourself about that. And then start to play around with different options you may have. And I'll give you two examples. One is for me, when I was thinking I had no time and I was overwhelmed and it was just, I was feeling so busy, I looked at my calendar and realized I had all kinds of meetings in there that I didn't necessarily have to have. And that maybe they were 60 minutes, but they could be 30 minutes. I also had the situation where I was invited maybe to other people's meetings, and even if it's my boss or somebody more senior than me, and really questioning, like, do I really need to be here? And asking that and putting yourself first. So that's one thing, is that we often we have a thought that we have to do these things. And I would say, do you want to do them? And if you don't want to do them, what other options could you look at? So start to get curious. The other example I'll give you is as a parent, my kids are teenagers now. So what we do with them is a little different than when they were little ones. But some of it's like, I have to have my house clean and I have to have this much groceries and I have to, and that thinking, if you change it and say, what do I want to do? And what's really important here? And also making sure that as you think about what's important, do you need to set some time aside for you so that you can fill yourself up so that you have more to give to your loved ones? So just, it's kind of a long answer because we could go on for a very long time about our thoughts about time. But the main thing I would just close with is really get curious about what you want to do during the day. And if there are things on there that you don't want to do, start to ask what other options you may have. And if you start to think that you have options, you'll get very creative, is my guess.
Thank you, Jennifer. What can you do to start dreaming again? What can one do to start dreaming again?
I love this question. And I actually have a blog on my website about dreaming with intention. And I actually had a methodology there that I suggest people to think about when they think about dreaming. And one of it is about cultivating this mindset of abundance and thinking about, if I could do anything, what would I do and why would I do it? And really kind of allowing yourself that experience of exploration without worrying about how to do it. The other thing is to get really curious about what your belief is about your desires. And again, for a lot of women, I've found we often have messages that we should put other people first, and not to say men don't either, but very commonly I find women have this thought, I have to put other people first. And so even the thought of dreaming and thinking about what they desire is very uncomfortable. And so I often tell them, like, really get curious about your belief of your ability to desire things. And so I do encourage you, if you're interested in dreaming with what I call with intention, with a practical sort of lens to dreaming, to check out the blog on my website. And I would love to hear what you think of it.
Awesome, thank you. I'm loving a mindset of abundance tag. It's really something that for many of us it brings an emotion of, or thought of, wanting too much or being greedy or taking more than your fair share. But as you've explained, it is the way, the path to opening your thoughts and opening your mind. So for me, that's great. The next question is, oh, it's not a question, it's a comment. And it says, this is the first time I've heard the advice to sit with your emotions. I've always been told to hold it in. Love this.
Yeah, and I'll be very honest with you, like, and I find, again, I may be stereotyping a little bit, but being in technology for so long, a lot of sort of technically oriented people we're in our heads a lot. We're very analytical, we're very thoughtful. And so for me, the mindset work that I've done personally and professionally was a little more natural for me. But then I found I had to really get into my body. So I was in my head and I'm not connecting really to my body and my emotions. So absolutely, like we are taught, and we do have messages about a lot of judgments about certain types of emotions. I did this talk at another, I shared a portion of this in another venue, and one of the women said, but it's really bad to cry in front of people. And I said, why? Let's really be curious about, why is it so bad to cry in front of people? And again, it's just an example of a message that we may have heard that causes us to start to put judgment on our feelings. And so, like I said, though, it's not like they go away. I actually think of them kind of scientifically, because that's sort of my mindset, but I just feel like it's like a biological process that needs to happen. And it can either happen with a ton of resistance and it just takes longer and it gets more intense, or you can just let it flow and just believe that it will process through the way it needs to. And that's been my experience as I sort of just allow these emotions to be there.
Thank you, Jennifer. There's one more question, after which would like to open the floor and ask people to ask questions directly if they would like to. But before we go there, there's one more question, and it says, from your experience and interactions over the years, at what stage or age range have you seen people face the most challenge in changing their mindset and thoughts about themselves? So what's the trend, and how have they successfully controlled and changed those mindsets?
Yeah, you know what? That's a great question, and such an important one. First of all, I just want to make sure it's clear. I would not recommend you try to control your mind, your thoughts, or your feelings. It's really important to allow them and be curious. And then start to decide on purpose if you want to keep thinking that or not. It sounds subtle, but it is really important, because otherwise, when you start to control things, you're kind of implying they're really bad, and then that's kind of a form of resistance. But that was just a little bit of a clarity point I thought was important. In terms of age, my belief is that the importance of being aware and managing your mind and your feelings, it's important your entire life. And I have children who are teenagers now, but seeing them in different phases of their life and the impact of how they're thinking, I think that this stuff just isn't taught to us proactively. It's not something that we naturally learn. And for me, it should be like fundamental education and practice all throughout, from a very young age, all throughout. So I don't know that it's specific to any one age. I think that I think that anyone can benefit from this work, and anyone could be in a position where their thinking is maybe not serving them and they're not even aware of it. Most people, their thinking isn't serving them. I will tell you, for me, as I got older, as I got into my 40s, as you can tell from my story, that mindset of constraint, for me, it just started to get more and more and more. So ironically, like, I had built up so many assets and experience, you would think that I would be coming at life from a place of abundance because of everything I had created. But instead, for some reason in my 40s, it was like I had less and less and less options. So that's kind of how I experienced it. But I would say I think, I see it in my kids as teenagers. I've seen it in young children as well. And my clients are, all kinds of different ages. I think it's just something we don't learn very well at all. So.
Thank you, Jennifer. So while people are showing up for questions, my question is, how would you teach children, younger people around you, how to, because I think for us, especially in our community as Nigerians, we're not expected to show emotion. We're not expected to show emotion so openly. But how can we begin to change that mindset? How can we begin to teach the people around us that it's okay for them to show us their emotions? I know that for instance, when I get angry, I cry. And being in tech, I get angry a lot with my team, my team of IT, especially the guys. And when I burst into tears because I'm so angry, the question I always get is, why are you being so emotional?
Yeah.
But anger is an emotion, sadness is an emotion, but it's only crying by a woman that's emotional. So how would I encourage my team, for instance, to to be to share their emotions and thoughts with me? That's the first question.
Yeah, and I think, again, we all have different messages that we've gotten throughout the year, either culturally or from a gender perspective. There's different sort of judgment around emotions. I think, for example, for men, many messages are like, you don't cry, like you have to be tough, you can't be sad. Like, so there's all kinds of judgment around emotions. I would say, firstly, is to be a role model. And again, I'm not suggesting that you should be super angry and be reactive as well. But you know, to be aware that you're feeling anger, and then to decide how you want to process it and where to process it, and sort of being mindful of that is important. To be a role model around, it's okay, we're all human. And I will tell you, many times in my career, I've been told that I'm too emotional, which made me angry. And my response was, I'm actually quite passionate. This is my form of passion. Like, it's not that I'm too, like, what does it even mean to be too emotional? We're humans. Do we want to be robots, right? So I think part of it is being a role model. Part of it is understanding what messages we give to people and how we allow them to feel the way they need to feel. But again, I do think it's important to recognize, when I say, allow yourself to process an emotion, it's important to think about, like, how do I want to do that? What way how do I want to process that emotion? And recognizing that it's caused by your thought. You're having a thought that's causing that feeling. It's not because of another person. It's not because of a situation. It's because you're having a thought in your mind. It's creating that experience for you. And the more aware you are of it, the more then you're in a good position to decide, well, how do I want to process this emotion? And who do I want to share it with? And what kind of support do I want around me as I'm doing so? So just another thing, like, reacting to emotion is not necessarily the same of processing it, and sort of being more intentional and thoughtful about the fact it's there and being okay that it's there. So I hope that makes sense the way I've described it. The other thing that I've been really watching myself is with my own kids. When they're feeling anxious, I want to go fix it. And now what I really try to do is say, it's okay that you're feeling anxious about that. That's totally normal. Now tell me what you're thinking about, and I'm here to help you. I know you'll get through this. That's an example of me allowing them to feel anxious without trying to fix it for them, but also still just showing them I'm here to support them.
Thank you. Thank you. Abiola, do we have anyone who wants to ask a question?
Yeah, I think the floor is open. If anyone has any question that they would want to ask directly to Jennifer, please unmute yourself and let's see. But we do have a question here in the chat by Jacqueline. How can an older person become more positive about themselves in regards to new careers, in light of the fact that we no longer have time to reach the brass ring?
This is an amazing question, because it is very, very common, and very much the thinking I had when I was in my 40s. Like, my runway is short, which is another version of, like, we no longer have time. My runway is short. And I would just say the first part of that is that really true? Is our runway really short? What does that even mean? And how long, like, if I think about even a 5-year period of my career, there is a ton that can happen in 5 years, especially when you have 25 years of amazing experience. You're taking all of that with you in whatever you do. If you think about what just happened in 2020, and like all the things that happened within it wasn't even a full year for the pandemic at that time. That's just in a year, all the things that can happen. And I'll share with you, in 2 years, if I look back on everything that I chose to do, it was full of amazing things that had nothing to do with my age or my runway or how much time I have. So part of the interesting part about that question is that there's a belief that there's not enough time. And again, it's that difference between having a mindset of abundance and having a mindset of constraint, which again, most of us have a mindset of constraint. It really takes practice to think from a place of abundance. And so, and the other thing that's really interesting is to start to look for evidence of people who are older and some of the remarkable things that they've done in their 40s, in their 50s. It's really about choice and what's important to you and how you want to spend your time. It has nothing to do with your age, but it does have a lot to do with what you believe about what's possible for you, and building up the belief that there are many, many things possible for you is part of the work. It's part of what we tend to not practice. So I totally appreciate where you're coming from, because I was there. And that's how I started. It was really about me thinking differently about my age. And I love that I'm 47. I love that I have all this experience behind me, and really feel very strongly that I can do whatever I want. And maybe I absolutely would not choose to do something I would do at 20. In fact, I can guarantee I wouldn't. But that's fine. That doesn't mean I have less options now.
Thank you. For tonight, I think
Thank
we
you,
should
Jennifer.
tweet a mindset of abundance versus a mindset of constraint. Hashtag NIPCA.
And I would just say, as a start for that, just again, awareness is the most powerful thing. Is when you start, when you find yourself thinking something, just ask yourself, is this coming from a belief of constraint or from a belief of abundance? And you don't even necessarily have to do anything. Just to start to build that awareness is really, really powerful.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Any questions from anyone? The floor is open. We have Jen here before we wrap it up, please. Or we start calling names. Questions one.
Yeah, sorry, my name is Roland. I had raised my hand, but I'm not sure you spotted me there. So,
Okay, I'll spot you now.
All right, thank you. So thanks so much, Jennifer, for your time and for the insightful presentation you've had with us. My question is, when you went through that change experience, what was the time frame for you to make that huge, turnaround? And is change something that can happen suddenly for anyone, or would one have to give himself or herself like a time frame to have that mental reprogramming, if I may use that phrase?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I would just say that it's a very personal, unique journey for everybody. And I'm still on it. So I have a coach. I have a couple of coaches. Some of them are peer coaches of mine. And I'm just constantly on this journey of being curious about my mind. All kinds of stuff happens in my head, as you can imagine. So it's an ongoing journey. But I will tell you that once I started to sort of embrace the possibility of my thoughts creating my feelings, and that I had the option to start to be curious about my thoughts and to change them, like some things that I've just been believing forever. I would say for me, once I started coaching, once I started listening to the podcast, the wheels started turning, and it started to impact the way I looked at things. And then when I started coaching, within 2 months, it was just life-changing for me for 2 months. Now, not to say within 2 months, like I was done. But within 2 months, I went from feeling really a lot of anxiety about my job to loving it. And I made a decision to become a life coach. I made a decision to start my own business. I made a decision to go camping in Algonquin Park for a weekend. It was freezing cold, by the way, when we went, and loving it. So that was for me, but I don't want to set expectations. Like there is no right or wrong time frame. It's really just a continual process of being curious and being open to different ways of thinking. And I think that's really what's most powerful, if you get anything out of this, is being open to different ways of thinking. And part of being open to different ways of thinking is meeting and learning from other people who think differently than you and have different life experiences than you. I mean, that's one of the most powerful ways to grow, I think, is also just being open to other people's thoughts and perspectives and considering them. So yeah, there's no right or wrong time frame. It's really just about trying to become aware and curious, and that's the starting point, really.
The words continuous improvement come to my mind.
Yeah, it's like continuous exploration of possibility. And I still find things that I believe and think that might not be serving me. And then I just follow the same process. Do I want to keep that thinking? And why am I thinking that way? And just getting curious. I will tell you, one of the biggest things that this whole transformation enabled me with is the ability to evoke curiosity. I mean, I try to bring curiosity into almost anything I'm doing, which drives my family crazy because I'm like constantly asking them questions. So just be careful about that. But just that feeling of curiosity, it's a very powerful emotion, actually.
Awesome. Thank you. Does anyone else have a question that they'd like to ask? We are going to be timing out soon, so.
No, in the bin. Sorry, good evening. IK here. Sorry, I can't turn on my camera. I have a question. Jennifer had spoken to it a couple of times ago, but she could as well expound on it. First of all, thank you very much, Jennifer, for an amazing presentation. It's been mind-boggling and mind-challenging. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
Okay, great. So, my question is, how do you balance that mentality of an abundance mindset with a scarcity mindset? That's my question in summary. Right now, we have two toddlers, a 3-year-old and a 1.5. And then there's so much we get to do, having to run around with the family, managing work, that as much as my wife is thinking about the CPA, I'm thinking of my master's, there seems to be barely enough time. You can hear my toddler is holding up very close to me. So how do you actually balance this reality versus a mindset of creativity and abundance, and how do you do all that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I so miss those days when the kids were little. I was sharing that earlier. My kids are teenagers and they're in their bedrooms with the door locked. And I'm like, let me in. I want to see your face. So very different. But again, I would say is just check your thinking. And when I say like come at it with a mindset of abundance, it doesn't mean be totally impractical and, try and do backflips when you can't, do a front roll, or I don't know why I have the gymnastics analogy in my head, but, there is a layer of decisioning and practicality that you want to bring to it. And I think that depending on what's happening in your life, one of the challenges is when you go in thinking it's not possible, you will create the result that it's not possible. When you go into it thinking it could be possible, and you think of all the ways it could be possible for you, you still are empowered to make a choice about what you prefer and what's important to you. And so instead of making a decision, I can't do a master's degree because my kids are too young, you can make a decision that says, I don't know what it would be for you, but it could be, I'm going to do my master's degree, but I'm going to do it this way, and then I'm going to manage the kids in this way. Or it could be, you know what? I still want to do my master's, but it's more important to me right now to invest my time here with my children. So it becomes more of a decision that you're empowered to make versus something that's out of your control that is happening to you. And so you may come to the same conclusions about things, but the experience of your decision and where you're at and the choices you've made feel much more empowering, and they feel like you've been in control of what you want and why you want those things. So I hope that's helpful. But again, it's really about how are you experiencing and having discussions around your dreams, and then applying all, making a decision about what's important to you and what you prefer to do right now and why. So I hope that helps.
Okay.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Okay, does that answer your question?
Oh, yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Okay.
Trying
Great.
as much as possible to take ownership of my decisions that I make, right? So yes, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Jen. Any other person? Any other question?
Me. Hello, everyone.
Hey. Okay.
Yeah, I'm Faith. It's just, an interesting question. Jennifer, so I'm looking at you really closely, and you say you're past 40 and you look so young. How have you been able to keep that beauty together? I mean, tell us, beauty tips, health tips.
Thank you so much. I don't always feel that way. That's part of my own thinking, right? You know what? I don't know, like physically, but I can tell you mentally, I feel very young. And I didn't always feel that way. Even in my 30s, I felt pretty old. And I think that shines through, right? I think youth is really about your energy and what you're able to bring to yourself and to others. And so I really appreciate your compliments. But for me, I would say, what's really been important is I have a very, I would say, youthful energy and mindset, and that probably shows through as well. And anything else might be genetics. I don't know. My mom is 73, 72. And I think she looks pretty incredible too. And also she has a wonderful energy about her. So.
Cool.
Great. Okay. Any other question? So Jen, while we wait for anyone to ask, considering the way this community is, we pretty much do have so many people still coming into the country, immigrating to Canada. And part of the numerous challenges is getting into the country and really seeing the reality of what they hear back home and what the reality is here in Canada. And at that point in time, I can tell you so many people are, pretty much just lost it. They lose it, What would your advice be to people in that category? The ability for them to quickly retrace their steps and be able to take back, that power to be able to really integrate into the environment, which is one of those, one of the pillars why NIPCA is here at this point in time, to be able to help each and every one of us coming into the country and be able to really settle down. But again, the reality dawns on you as you come into the country. And if you are not part of those that have that proper support, it's possible to lose track of what is the reality and what is not. So what would your advice be for people within that space to be able to take back the energy they are coming into the country with?
Yeah, I think that's such an important question. And I've actually had the privilege of coaching and meeting with quite a number of newer immigrants to Canada, many of them from Nigeria, actually. And so a couple of things I would suggest, and this is true for that kind of transition that you just mentioned, moving from one country to another, which is a significant change and transition for many people, or any other kind of sort of major transition, is to allow yourself to give yourself space and compassion to deal with all of the uncertainty and questions and discomfort that will come from that. And so that's sort of first and foremost, I would say, is give yourself some time and space to get yourself learning and understanding and getting yourself centered and settled. So that's one thing I would definitely suggest, is allow yourself the transition. And I'll mention this to people. It's not the same type of change, certainly, than what you've described, but I often tell people who have started a new job, maybe it's in a new company or just a different job, give yourself at least 3 months just to figure stuff out. Not, like, just give yourself permission to not have your shit together. And often that permission is just very freeing, right? Like, it's okay that I don't have my shit together. And maybe it's not 3 months, maybe it's 4 months, maybe it's whatever. It's really not the time frame. It's more about giving yourself permission to be where you are when you're going through that kind of transition, and reminding yourself, hold on, I'm giving myself permission to be figuring stuff out still. And not trying to actually put some kind of time frame on it, because it's a personal journey. So that's one thing. And the second thing is that awareness practice that I suggested is applicable for anything. So just staying really in tune with, what am I thinking right now? How am I feeling? Is that thought serving me? What else could I possibly, what are other thoughts I could be thinking about right now? So that awareness practice is also applicable. And the other thing I'll share with you that I found are sort of some common thoughts from folks that I've talked to who have immigrated to Canada is kind of two things, which is, what if the fact that you don't understand maybe how Canada works, or whatever the thought was, what if the fact that you're different and you're bringing different lived experiences from a different country, what if that was your superpower? How would you show up if you really believe that could actually be a superpower? Because I think it is a superpower to bring in a unique perspective into any environment. So just that belief that where you're at and what you're bringing and where you come from is a superpower in Canada is something that you can play around with and think about. And then the other thing I've suggested to people is, your whole life and story matters. I think there might be some messaging, and this is me naively born and raised in Canada, not having lived elsewhere. I think there is sometimes a belief that, your story in Nigeria is not as important now, and things are different in Canada. And I heard that a few times, and I was just sort of perplexed, just me coming from my own lived experience, thinking, I don't understand why that has to be true. And then I just probe people to say, like, what if your whole story is amazing and everything you did in Nigeria and everything that you are is still amazing in Canada? How would you position that story? How would you show up as you're learning and growing and meeting people if you believed that? So I only offer those couple thoughts because I've heard variations of them sort of thematically from different people. And lastly, I think it is so important to just constantly be saying, I'm figuring this out. I'm in a position of learning, and opening yourself up to all different ways you can figure it out. And I think community is one of the most powerful things. So I'm so thrilled that this community exists and it's so successful, and I understand it's growing, and that I've been able to be a part of it. I think community is a cornerstone to helping us support each other and see ourselves for our greatness. So that was sort of a long-winded answer, but just sort of positioning a few different ways to maybe approach some of the thoughts that might be coming up when you make that kind of life-changing move.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Pretty much that addresses quite a number of those fears and those thoughts practically. And thank you, Jacqueline. The comment in the chat pretty much painted a different perspective to it. Something newcomers should know is that even people born in Canada have the same challenges when we move from one side of the country to the other. Each province and territory has their own culture and weather. It isn't easy for us either. Thank you for that perspective. I think it's important for this community and for so many other people that will be coming in to run with this rich mindset, which is one of those key things that this community preaches. It's all about the mindset. Putting yourself in that space to be able to make a difference generally. Any other question? One last question. Going to one lucky person. It could be a comment. It could be a comment. It could be anything. Calling on anyone. Oh, I call a name, not a threat.
There's a lot to think about. Everyone's brain might be a little bit tired.
Okay, well, in the absence of none, I think it's
let me just make a quick comment. Something more of a takeaway from me. Pardon me, my baby daughter is here, so just in case she interjects, she's also enjoying the NIPCA Masterclass. One of the most powerful things Jennifer has said today is just being the realization that being from somewhere else is actually a power play that could be in your favor. Walking into a room and being different in her own perspective, in her own opinion, could be used in a very powerful mantra. That's really struck me because I probably have never thought of it that way. Most people walk into new situations and are timid right from the start. You always have the feeling that you need to catch up. You always have the feeling that you need to do put in triple the effort just to get out the same output with other people. Shh.
Don't shush, huh? Come on.
He's experiencing joy right now.
I'm sorry, pardon me. I really like that. It really struck a chord with me, and it's something that I would like to amplify because you've said so many great things. It's very easy to lose track of a couple of real gold in the dust. This one for me, right at the end of the entire presentation, was something that I felt really stood out there, really struck out, and I want to actually personally thank you for that perspective because it has probably realigned a lot of thinking and perspectives for me as well.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thanks, Ugo.
Thank you, Jennifer. You have a few thank you notes in the chat if you want to catch up with them. But from us, would like to say thank you so much for spending time with us tonight. I don't think that there's anyone on this call who hasn't taken away something, who hasn't had some can opened where they need to do some more thinking. They need to get curious about a thought or an emotion. It's really great to have you on board. I'm going to let Osita give a few closing remarks. And if there's anything that you'd like to add, please feel free to do so.
I think before you jump into it, pretty much everyone can unmute. You can unmute yourself, and let's just say a big thank you to Jennifer. I think it's important for us to show our appreciation before any other thing happens on this. Unmute yourself, and let's do that usual NIPCA welcoming or show of appreciation. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Over to you.
Fantastic. What a great session. And to come to think of it, that this is our first masterclass of the year. Trust me, there is no better session that we would have started the year than this. Because, Jennifer, just like you said, and again, some of our members have mentioned, trust me, one of the major challenges, we are, of course, talking about the Black immigrants. One of the major challenges we do face is the fact that, sometimes we feel that we are inadequate. So you walk into a boardroom and you are seeing all white folks, and you are second guessing yourself. What about if I say something and they say, hey, this guy have got some accent, or this guy is saying rubbish, or so we've got a whole lot of things playing on our mind, playing on our head, and that in a way can impact us greatly, because sometimes you have great ideas, you have things to say, but because of that, that notion, you see yourself keeping quiet. I've come across some of our members that say to me, I went into a meeting and I did not even make any comment till the end of the meeting. And I'll be like, why? In a meeting where everybody's contributing and you're just quiet. So it's actually a problem, really, but again, with the session we have, which is like starting of the year, you have kind of re-empower us to kind of imagine. There's nothing like taking back your power, because back home it's a different ballgame. We've all got our powers, just like when Omayeri was talking about men, talking about emotion, about a man back home is a strong person. Our emotions are hidden. You can't show emotion because you want to always prove that you're powerful. That is, and again, in a way, it has actually helped us because, for example, as a man, you can't just go out there and you come back home crying, saying that you were beaten by someone. Your parents will beat you. I said, go back and make sure you deal with that person. You don't come back home and say, hey, somebody, no, it's not done. So that have really helped us and built us as well to be strong mentally, emotionally, and otherwise. But coming in a country like this, a lot of us face challenges. And like Abiola said, some people will crush those challenges and move on, while some will not be able to crush it. Some is going to take them quite some time to be able to crush that. So a session like this tonight have really helped us a great deal. I believe it was impactful to a whole, not a whole, all of us in this particular session tonight, to understand that we've all got emotions, right? There's nothing wrong with checking in on our emotions. There's nothing wrong with being vulnerable. There's nothing wrong about it. But as well, it's also important to make sure that we don't hold it. Let's let loose of those emotions, and as well try to check in from time to time to make sure that we are aligned to our career trajectory, to what we intend to accomplish as people. We've got great visions back home before we come in here. Some of us coming here, we pursue those visions aggressively. Some people come in here and what they tell them is that, no, you need to start small, right? And what do you see? Some of them, you will just go back, probably, working in Tim Hortons. I mean, no offense to the guys that work in Tim Hortons, but again, when you've got a master degree holder, right, working as an attendant, I think there's misalignment there. So those are the kind of scenarios that we see from time to time. But thankfully, we've got this community. And with partnering with yourself and your company, I believe that we will be able to do much more in the near future, which is all about mindset transformation, educating our people to be much better, and also educating our people that we can accomplish all we have set out to accomplish. Thank you so very much tonight.